Now, for my main class, up until I got really frustrated with it, Resto Shaman. Where would I rank this healer amongst the tier of what's easiest in Shuffle? I would probably put Shaman towards the middle of the pack. It's got a good amount of RNG to it. You know, there's a good amount of randomness based on your lobby, whether or not it's going to be easy. If you get a lobby that has a lot of melee, depending on the healer you're fighting, if it's a Holy Pally or, you know, even a Disc Priest, which is ironic because I think they're the worst healer at the moment, or you're fighting, you know, a Druid or something like that, or an Evoker. One of those healers, I would say Paladin and Evoker being the worst. If you fight those healers and they're paired up with mainly melee in a lobby for solo shuffle, it's most likely going to be pretty rough for you. But if you ever have lobbies where it's, you know, 2 casters, 3 casters, 4 casters, and you're on a Resto Shaman, I think you're going to have a good time. It's going to be a lot more fun. And I think you're going to be able to manage to squeeze out some wins. Those are probably going to be the best lobbies for you. You know, anyone who has experience on Shaman, we all know that the melee are going to be very, very difficult to begin with. So that was the first thing I want to say. I think Shaman is going to be good. I think it is definitely towards the middle in terms of the healer tier for how easy it was for me to push rating, which is funny because it is my main healer, but Shaman recently has been a very ramp up healer. There's a lot of ramp up. You know, you're going to put your Earthen down, you're going to put your Healing Stream, your Healing Tide, you're going to press your Root, you're going to press your Riptide spam, you're going to try to Primordial. So there's a lot of ramp up before you can kind of get your healing going on Shaman, which we'll break it down a little bit in the next few minutes. But I would say first off that you do not want to get discouraged. If you're going to play Resto Shaman in solo shuffle, do not get discouraged. You're going to have lobbies that are rough, and that's just kind of how it goes. You need to not be too scared about it, not be too worried. Oftentimes you're going to have melee and it's going to be a rough one, but I think you can always kind of pull through depending on the healer or the map, because there are a few tricks that you can do to help you. And that's what I'm going to be showing you. To get into Shaman and how to climb in Shuffle. Pretty simple. I don't think Shaman is the hardest thing to heal or the hardest healer to play in terms of your healing output. I think what makes Shaman hard is kind of maximizing your utility. So what I mean by that is it's really easy to kind of have your opener, right? Your opener, you're going to run in, you're going to have a Riptide on somebody. So, you know, you Riptide the target, you're going to be able to press your Healing Stream, and then you kind of have to sit around. You can maybe throw a Root Totem out on the DPS or the DPS and slow them. You know, you're going to have an Earthen Totem as well. So oftentimes what's going to happen is you're going to have Earth Shield on your main target. You're going to Riptide them when they take damage. You're going to have a Healing Stream down. And then if people are running in, they're pressing every CD, you can press your Earthen Totem. So Earthen Totem, you can also reset your Earthen Totem here with Totemic Recall. And as you can tell by what I'm saying, there is a lot of ramp up on Shaman. You just have to not be too worried about it. It's all going to be okay. It's going to feel stressful, but it is going to feel very rewarding as well. So a bit of ramp up time with pressing all your totems, but overall not too bad once you kind of get into the rhythm of it. I think that it's also going to be important to understand that your utility is what's going to win you the game. So you have your standard opener, Earth Shield up, you have a Riptide out, you have a Healing Stream down, you can Earthen Totem as well. That's typically what you can do. You can also root the melee as well. And now here's the fun part, okay? The fun part of Shaman is being able to use your utility, all right? So you're going to have Lasso as well. You're going to have Static Field. So what you can do, and what I like to do, because I typically play Shaman in a more aggressive way, what you can do as long as your team is stable and you have your cooldowns traded, you have your totems down, your Healing Stream, your Tide, you can get very, very creative, and you can also be very aggressive with Shaman. So what I mean by that is once you have all your CC down, if the DPS are running in and you're by a pillar, you can run in, you can lasso them, stay by the pillar. Now you have a lightning lasso on the DPS. Typically what people do, especially lower ratings in Shuffle, if they can't interrupt it, is they're just going to trinket. So a lot of times people are going to run in, they're going to press their CDs, you lasso them, guess what? Immediate trinket from the DPS. Now you're kind of ahead just because this guy's trinketing the first second of the game, which is always helpful because that'll help you set up later on in dampening in a Shuffle. I also think a huge thing you can do on Shaman, which we've all seen throughout the tournaments and throughout streams and just in Arena in general, because it's become a really popular thing, is you now have Static Field Totem. So Resto Shaman was given Static Field Totem in the second patch, and what you're able to do with this is you're able to Static Field, and then you can Totemic Projection and move the totem. So You have to be careful with the spell. You can't drag people through pillars if they're out of line of sight. You also have a limited range on your projection. I believe it's 20 yards. So you have to be careful with that. A lot of people, they're going to try to push their static field and throw it, you know, as far as possible across the map. And then they sit there and they're like, wait, my static field bugged. It's not a bug. It just has a max distance that you can use it for. I think that once you can kind of master using this spell and being able to projection away, you can do some really fun things with it. You can static field melee, drag them across. You can static field a healer, which is personally my favorite thing to do because I don't know, maybe I'm really a mean person or something. I don't think I am, but something about static fielding a healer or thunderstorming them across the map and then static fielding them further really does bring me joy. Anyone who has ever done anything like that in arena should definitely know the feeling, but it is very nice to, you know, you static field someone or you thunderstorm the healer away, right? You static field them off that and then you throw them even further. So you can kind of create a lot of distance from them, make them range their teammates. And especially in solo shuffle, if you do this, you're going to cause a lot of panic, especially if you're able to do it in the correct way or in a way that kind of disrupts them more. Whether that's knocking them behind a pillar and throwing them further, whether that's knocking them off the map in Blade's Edge and then keeping them stuck at the bottom, whether that's, you know, knocking them so that you can actually move them to the pillar and then lasso them as well and you can stun them. So there's a lot of nifty things you can do on Shaman that kind of make it fun and will kind of set you apart in a shuffle. The number one thing I would say for that, and I really, really hope that people listen to this advice, is you don't want to get too antsy, okay? You don't want to get too focused on that, too fixated on it, because you're going to have people that they are way too focused on doing this crazy stuff like static fielding away, and then you root them, and then you can stun them. And while this is happening, you know what's going on? Their team dies. Their teammates die in 30 seconds because you're not healing anymore and you're too busy doing all this fancy stuff. So you have to pick and choose when to do this, and you have to be careful. As long as your team is stable, like I said earlier, it's going to be a good thing to do. If you are in deep dampening and you feel like you're going to lose the round, then you can take a risk and kind of do these offensive plays. But overall, you have to be careful when you decide to do this. You have to make sure your team is stable before you're doing these things. And once again, you can use it on the healer. You can do it on DPS as well. So that's something that's really fun to do is if you're fighting melee or just DPS in general, you can drag them to a bad spot. You can either drag them to a corner, at a line, or you can drag them away. So like, let's say you're fighting a warrior and a DK, correct? You're fighting a warrior and a DK. They're running down your hunter. You can static field the melee, drag them away, and then you can also put a root totem on them. So now they're kind of stuck for a few seconds until they kill their totem. You give your hunter some room to breathe. And little plays like that, little mechanics like that with your utility are what's going to help you climb and shuffle on Resto Shaman. So I would say those are the biggest things. Shaman's pretty simple in terms of how to win shuffle. It's not like when we broke down Paladin and there's kind of a few things that people don't really do. Shaman is very, very, very simple in terms of how to climb. You press your totems, you press your healing stream, your healing tide, you try to earthen as much as you can, and then you static field people away or you root people or you lasso them. So your healing's pretty simple. Healing stream, healing tide, earthen, you spam riptide. Using your utility is going to be the hardest thing. Using your root, you know, being able to lasso a DPS like we talked about, lasso a DPS, run behind the pillars so they can't stop it, being able to static field them away, being able to knock melee away as well. This is what's going to help you climb and help you win games. Another useful tip I would say overall is, and this is something that people still don't really do too well, I would say, Spirit Link is going to redistribute health, correct? So it's not going to be affected by dampening. So oftentimes, Spirit Link, if you can somehow save it for later parts of the shuffle round when you're deeper in dampening, that is going to help you kind of stabilize when you get to those moments, because you get to those moments in deep dampening 50, 60, 70%. Your primordial NS or like your big ascendant heals, they aren't really going to do as much compared to being able to kind of press Trinket and press a Spirit Link, right? So these things are going to help you a lot. If you're able to manage that as best as you can and kind of have good judgment on when to press Spirit Link, that'll help you a lot. It takes practice. You know, it's hard to say myself, and it's hard to tell you when to do it because it is going to take practice. It is going to be situational, but there are going to be moments where you kind of have to press Spirit Link in the first 10 seconds of the game, which is never a good feeling, but those games do happen. Those moments do happen. My best advice would be that if you're able to practice and get comfortable with having that cooldown for later in dampening, I do think that you're going to be able to outlast other teams and be able to climb rating as well. So Shaman's pretty simple in that regard for, you know, the tips and tricks and overview of how to climb. I think that overall you don't really have any issues with mana. You don't really have any issues with, you know, some crazy form of healing output. A lot of it is spamming your Riptide and your Unleash, which is your instant heals, making sure that you have your healing stream and your healing tide down, using that utility defensively with shear and grounding, as well as static field and root. That is the hardest part. The healing is not the hardest part, but, you know, being able to wind shear and ground correctly and static field and, you know, earth grab totem and throw people away, like that's what's going to help. So, you know, you're fighting a DPS, they're casting a spell, you can run behind the pillar. Let's say they're casting a chaos bolt on your teammate. You can run behind the pillar, drop a grounding. They can't kill the grounding because it's behind the pillar. Now you survived for, you know, 2-3 seconds with those large casted spells from the enemy. Things like that defensively are going to help a lot. But I do think that the utility that you can use aggressively with static field or even defensively with static field, that's going to help you win games and shuffle. Pretty simple overall. You know, same opener like we talked about, just to break it down one more time. Same opener, you have Earth Shield up, you have a Riptide up, you have a healing stream. If people are going crazy, you know, you're seeing all the animations go off. You've got the Mez Weakor with the air horns and everything. You have an Earthen Totem. You can even reset Earthen Totem as well and drop a double Earthen Totem. For those who don't know, they actually do stack. So you can double Earthen as well into certain classes, and it kind of just kills all their pressure. I would say it's really good against, you know, I would say a lot of things. DKs, Demo Locks, BM Hunters, even classes like Windwalker Monk, even though they can kind of, you know, they can kick your head off with a Rising Sun kick. It's definitely still very useful to be able to have a double Earthen and kind of alleviate some pressure with that. So opener wise, that's kind of what you want to do. I think that, you know, utilizing static field and throwing people away is very big as well. You can root them after you throw them. You have your lasso still, which you can use. So like I said, you can lasso, run behind the pillar, and you have these tools that kind of can be disruptive, but also create openings to be offensive where, you know, you can lasso someone, they trinket, or, you know, later in the game in dampening, you can lasso a healer for CC. So you can't get a hex at the moment. Well, guess what? You can just press lasso, run around the pillar. Now that healer's CC, they can't stop it. And it's the same thing for him, where if he doesn't have a trinket, they might end up dying because it is deep in dampening at this point and shuffle around. So I would say overall, Shaman is pretty simple in terms of what you need to do. It's just hard to actually execute it. So I think it's going to take a lot of practice. It's going to be discouraging for some people. So you have to do your best to just not be discouraged. Don't freak out. You know, you mess up a static field throw, which happens to the best of us. I do it all the time. You mess up a static field throw because they're too far, or, you know, it bugs out because they use a gap closer at the same time, or, you know, they ran behind the pillar at the wrong time, so it didn't work. Don't freak out. Everything's fine. You get a melee cleave lobby, you lose. It happens. Queue up again. Try to work on that. Try to get better. Try to be better at static fielding melee away and rooting them and being disruptive with them with Thunderstorm as well. And you will climb and shuffle. It's just all about being persistent. So that'll be Shaman. Pretty simple. Just takes time. It's going to be very frustrating compared to a Paladin, but I think it is going to be something that if you can kind of get better at that and use your utility, it's not only going to be rewarding, but it is going to be really, really fun. And you are going to feel really good when you get, you know, a nice static field on the healer, throw them away, you win the round, all of a sudden people are messaging you saying that you're playing well, because people are always nice in solo shuffle. We all know that. Everyone's nice. No one's ever toxic. We all know that. So